In this video, we will work on this sign up button, okay? Every time we tap on this, we want to make a request to Firebase in order to sign out our user, okay? But before we can work on this sign out, as we said in the previous video, what we want to do right now, our user is logged in, okay? But if, for example, I close this up, okay, and I open it again, as you guys can see, we are redirected again to this login screen, okay? But we don't want this, okay? So if a user logs in, okay, at least once, we want the next time a user opens the app, we want the app to redirect him to the home screen, okay? So we will start by adding that verification first, okay? And then we can work on our sign out, okay? Okay, if we go back to our authentication service, okay, yeah, what we need a way, okay, when we initialize this, okay, when we initialize this authentication service, we need a way to make sure that if a user is already signed in, okay, we want to set this is authenticated to true, okay? So in order to do that, what we need to call this init function. So private init, and here we can call this off, and what we want to get the current user, okay? And yeah, if we are able to get the current user, that means we are able to authenticate. So what we can do, we can call this self that is authenticated, and we can set it to true, okay? So yeah, what we are saying is, okay, try to get a user, okay? And as you guys can see, this user is nullable, okay? So what we are saying is, okay, Firebase, we want to check if we already have a user, okay? So what we can do, we can add this if here. So if let user, or we can call it Firebase user. So if we are able to get this user, okay, that means a user is already logged in, okay? But if we are not able to get him, that means this is authenticated can be set to false, okay? So we can copy this and set this to false, okay? And of course, I think we can even remove this else branch. So let's try this. So here we are saying, okay, if we're able to get a user, we want to set this is authenticated to true, okay? And because this is true, when we will come here on this content view, when we will check for this is authenticated, because this is true, it will direct us to the main view, okay? So let's try this. If we launch our app again, as you guys can see, we are redirected to the main view, okay? And if I close this app, so let's close the app. If I close this up and I open it again, as you guys can see, we are directed here, okay? Which is cool. This is exactly what we wanted to do, okay? So now that that is done, what we want to do, we want to work on this sign out, okay? So every time, as we said, every time we hit on this sign out, what we want to make a request to Firebase and sign out a user, okay? So let's go back to our service. And before we can add our sign out here inside this service, what we want to do, we want to go back to this service protocol, okay? Because remember, this service protocol will help us like to keep this in order, okay? So every time we want to implement a new function here, what we want to do, we want to add this to our service protocol first, okay? After this sign in, what we want another function here, and we will call it sign out. And for signing out, we don't need the email, we don't need the password. The only thing we need this completion listener, okay? So we can copy this and paste it here. And with this, I think we should be okay. Now we have an error because now we need to implement this inside our service, okay? So here we need to create a new function. Let's create it after this sign in, and it's gonna to be function sign up. And here inside of sign up, what we want to do, we want to call this off again. So off from Firebase, and we want to call this sign out. Okay, perfect. But as you can see, we have to wrap this inside the try cache, okay? Why? Simply because something can go wrong, okay? Let's say a user try to sign out, but he doesn't have, for example, a good internet connection, okay? So things can go wrong, okay, when we are signing out. So that's the reason we need to wrap this inside the try catch, okay? So yeah, what we can do, we can add this do. So what we want to do, we want to try doing this. And if we get any error, we want to catch that error. And let's call it sign out error. And here we want to call this completion because we want to let our view know that we had an error. So we want to call this completion. And here for this completion, we are passing this boolean and this error, okay, this nullable error. So in case we have any error, we want to put it here, okay. So here for the boolean, we want to say that we were not able to sign out, so we will pass this false, and we also want to pass this error. Okay, perfect. And now if we successfully sign out, what we want to do, the first thing we want to do, we want to call this is authenticated, and we want to set it to false, okay, because our user is not authenticated anymore, okay. And we also want to call this completion, so completion. And yeah, we want to say that, okay, we were able to sign out, okay, and we didn't have any error, okay. So with this set, I think we are good, okay, when it comes to our service. The next thing we want to do, we want to add this and we want to call this from our view model, okay. And of course we need to go to our main view. And yeah, what we want to do, every time we tap on this button, okay, this action, so this is our sign out button. So every time we tap on this button, we want to call our service, okay. And of course we cannot call our service directly from a view. So what we need to do, we need to create a view model, okay. So here, right click, new file. It's gonna to be a Swift file, and we will call it main view model. And here we will create a new class, and we want it to be an observable object. And inside this view model, what we want, the first thing we want to get our authentication service, okay. So here it's going to be private var of service, and as we said before, we want this on service protocol, okay. So it's going to be authentication service protocol, and here we need to initialize this, okay. So what we can even do, we can go to our login view, okay, because we did this before. So we can simply copy this and paste it here. And now that we have this, what we can do, we can create a sign out function, okay. So it's going to be func sign out, and here now we can call this of service, and we want to call this sign out function. And of course it will come with this completion. So what we can do, we can simply hit enter. This first boolean, we will call it success, and here in case we have any error, we will simply call it error, okay. And yeah, in case this is successful, so if success, what we can do, we can simply print something. So let's print user signed out. And in case we have any error, what we want to do, we want to first get the error. So let error, which is going to be this error, so this one. And what we can do the same thing, we can simply print our error. Okay, perfect. And now the last thing we want to do, we want to go back to our main view, and we want to get an instance of our view model, okay. So it's going to be a state object, and we will call it view model, and it's going to be our main view model. Okay, perfect. Now that we have this instance of our view model, what we can simply do, we can copy this, and yeah, instead of simply printing this, what we want to do, we want to call this view model, and we want to call this sign out function, okay. So I think with this one we are pretty much done, but we forgot to do something, okay. If you guys remember, when we log in, we showed that logging loading button or loading icon, okay. And we want to do the same thing here, okay. So when we start signing out our user, we want to create a is loading variable, okay. The same thing we did here, okay. This is loading. So we can copy this, and yeah, what we can do, we can simply paste it here and say okay. When we start signing out, what we can do, we can simply set this is loading to true. Okay, and now that we have this, if we successfully signed out, what we simply want to call this is loading. So self is loading, and we want to set it to false. Okay, and with this, what we can do, we can go to our main view, and you guys remember this primary button has a is loading. Okay, so yeah, what we can do, we can simply say okay, this is loading. We want to call our view model, and we want to get that is loading. Okay, and normally everything should be okay, but here we have a problem. We have a problem because here what we are doing here is bad. Okay, and you can ask me, why is it bad to do this? Okay, this line of code is bad. Okay, why is it bad? Simply because we should never update our UI. Okay, we should never update our UI from a background thread. Okay, because this sign out, okay, even though we don't say it, this sign out, we create a separate background thread. Okay, so, and what I mean by background thread, because we are doing this is a long operation. Okay, because we are calling our database. Okay, we are going to Firebase, and behind the hood, this sign out, okay, when we call this sign out, okay, and we will call this sign out from this service. So this sign out, we are doing this inside a background thread. Okay, and we don't want to update our UI from this. Okay, so what we want to do, we want to say okay, after you are done doing this on the background thread, now what we want to come back to our main queue. Okay, so if we do the dispatch queue, we want to come back to this main queue. Okay, and we should only update our UI when we are on this main thread. Okay, so what we can do, we can simply cut this and put it here. Okay, and I know this can be confusing. Okay, so if you guys are still confused about this, please let me know in the comment section. Okay, maybe I can do like a full video about this on main and background thread. Okay, but for the sake of this video, what you should know is that this sign out function will be executed from a background thread. Okay, and if we want to update our UI, okay, if we want to update an element of our UI, okay, because we are using this is loading inside our UI. Okay, as you guys can see. Okay, so because we are using this is loading, we need to go back to our main thread. Okay, so it's as simple as that. Okay, with that said, I think we are ready to test our app again. Okay, to test our sign up button. So let's see. Okay, here we are signed in and we are on our main view. Okay, so let's see if this sign out button works or not. And as you guys can see, this sign up button works. Okay, we are redirected to our login screen. Okay, and let's try to log in again and sign out. And here our user is John at me.ca, and for our password 123, and let's try to log in. Let's see. Okay, so we successfully logged in. Okay, and now let's try our sign up button for the last time, and everything is working perfectly. Okay, the next thing we want to do, we want to implement this sign up button. Okay, so we want to go to our sign up view. Okay, and we want to finish this app by implementing this sign up function. Okay, so I'll see you in the next episode, and in the meantime, take care guys. Bye bye.